Got it.
What words do you think of when you think about birth? I love to ask this question in all my classes, from our doula workshops to our online classes, Pleasurable Birth Essentials, and my advanced practitioner retreats. We always discuss the words that reflect what our family and society have conditioned us to believe about birth. I hope you'll take a pause right now. Truly, write down your 3 words and tag us and get ready to consider how to love your birth. Hi, I'm Deborah Pascali Bonaro, founder and director of Orgasmic Birth and host of the Orgasmic Birth podcast. I am so excited and honored to introduce you to my guest today. She is one of the featured midwives in our documentary, Orgasmic Birth. Anne Margolis is a licensed certified nurse midwife, a licensed FEMM teacher, a certified Clarity breathwork practitioner, a yoga teacher and practitioner. She's a 3rd-generation guide to mamas, birth, and babies in her family, and she's helped thousands of families in her 28-plus-year midwifery practice and has personally ushered the birth of over 1,000 healthy babes into the world. She's also guided countless beings to heal from emotional pain, inner stress, and trauma, tapping into their strength and power to live fully and vibrantly and reclaim their radiance, joyfulness, calm, and overall sense of well-being. Her clients describe her as passionate, sensitive, big-hearted, and playful, a ball of light. When she's not helping mamas around the world, you can find her doing yoga anywhere and everywhere, dancing, walking outside around nature, riding her bike, paddleboarding, swimming, taking or facilitating powerful growth and healing workshops, and enjoying family time and playing with her dog Max, watching comedy and historical drama. Oh my goodness, Anne, reading even all about you and knowing you were coming today just lit me up as it brought me back to the several births that I've attended as a doula with you and having you a part of our documentary. So it's beyond a joy and honor to have you join
It's
us
great.
today.
It's great to be here. And your book. I think one of my clients submitted her birth story to your book.
Yes. So we've had lots of connection. And I know that, for so many of us that are in the birth field, it began with our own stories. And I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about your personal journey with birth and birthing your children.
So, I knew when I went to nursing school, as soon as I did my nursing clinical in obstetrics, I mean, I knew I wanted to help. I wanted to be in obstetrics. So I worked as an obstetric nurse before I became a midwife. And it was actually as working in a community hospital as an obstetric nurse where I got fear of birth, where I developed, birth, was a crisis, was an emergency meant to happen, a lawsuit we have to prevent. Everyone, we always have to look for the problems. And I started to just see these normal, healthy women coming in, and they were just given this cascade of interventions, put a hospital gown on and all these things. And then we were ending up way too often in the operating room, or we were having forceps and vacuum births, assisted births, and outcomes were not always good. And I was, went into my first pregnancy scared, right? And I didn't know, we didn't have internet back then, of course. And I went into my first birth. I hired the chief, one of the heads of the obstetric groups in the hospital where I worked. And I told him, I'm really scared. Like, I'm a dancer. I mean, I don't want to have a cesarean. I mean, I've seen a lot of major abdominal surgery. I haven't seen, sometimes the outcomes are not good. I'm really scared. He'll be fine. And that was it, but I was scared. And I took Lamaze, and but what happened was, of course, I was given the royal treatment when I went in, meaning, one of our staff is in labor. But that royal treatment was still the standard medical care that, so I was this healthy 24-year-old, told to wear a hospital gown. So in those days, we assume that that's normal, but then you sort of now I know that it takes away your power. You're in this ugly dress that people have died in or are sick in. And you just assume, you like surrender, you're just like an assembly line, right? Can't, have to get in the bed, can't eat or drink, IV, it's continuous monitoring. So no animal could labor like that, right? So of course my
No.
labor stopped, right? I mean, I was contracting, but and the doctor kept coming in, and he just kept internal exam like every hour, and out the door he would tell my colleague, she's still 4, and so give her pit. Now, if I wasn't a nurse, I wouldn't have known what that was, or if I, had took some really excellent class, childbirth class, but give her pit. When the nurse came in to put pit in my IV, I said, I don't want that. I know what that's going to do. That's going to make everything harder, stronger, faster, more intense. And she says, oh, but honey, you don't want a cesarean, do you? Now, she meant well by saying that, but that was like feared me into, no, I don't want a cesarean, so, and you're vulnerable at that point. So they gave me the pit, and then my Lamaze went out the window. It's almost inhumane to cope with the unnatural contractions of Pitocin without an epidurals. Of course, that came next. And between the two, my baby's heart rate crashed. So then it became a stat section. And my worst fear, Pam England says, your tiger, the worst fear is happening, right? So everyone's looking panicked, and I'm in a panic, and we rush to the operating room, and I was left by myself. I'm watching the clock, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. I knew they had 10 minutes to get my baby out, given the bradycardia, given the heart rate situation. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half hour, 45 minutes, an hour. The assistant surgeon hadn't come yet. So in my head, in my body, I was like going from my baby's going to die, my baby's going to be damaged, my baby is damaged, my baby's dead. And I left my body. That's a typical PTSD reaction, post-traumatic stress, to such a traumatic situation. The medications took over. I got out of the way. I was somewhere else. And suddenly I started pushing. And I called for help. The doctor comes running in, cuts a huge episiotomy, screams for a vacuum, and he's in a panic. And he vacuums out my daughter, and he was like, do you want to see the baby? And I'm like, no, I can't. I couldn't handle seeing a dead baby. And he goes, your baby's fine. And like, so I was like out of my body. What do you mean my baby's fine? And it took a long time. I wasn't fine. It took a long time for me to process that. So that meant that, number one, if she legitimately needed an emergency cesarean, the hospital still wasn't ready for that in an hour. So we would have had a dead baby. Like if there was legitimate distress, right?
Right.
Or I would have had an unnecessary cesarean because she was born screaming. She was vigorous. She had a perfect APGAR, right? So then I would have had an unnecessary cesarean of a healthy baby when there was no distress at all. And there was no consideration for my emotional, trauma sensitive care. There was no consideration of my experience, right? And so it took me a while to go back to work because, I had definitely PTSD, it's now, we have birth trauma, and, there are many organizations that liken the trauma of birth to a rape, very similar because it's a very intimate, it's very scary. It had, it's involving intimate parts of your body. Things are being done without your, without your consent. I didn't want the doctor to keep coming in every hour, sticking his hand, without talking to me. I'm just so much there, but I could go into that. But I was speaking to a friend and I was like, my hands are tied as a nurse. This cannot be the way people are supposed to have their babies. It's not humane. And what do you, I need to, I want to help the other women so that they don't have this situation. She says, why don't you become a midwife? I literally said, what's a midwife? That, I mean, I went to the library and I was like, I came home, I was reading, it's like a whole different paradigm. It's not like a birth is an emergency waiting to happen. It's that women's know how to birth their babies, like their bodies know how to breathe and their hearts know how to beat. We just have to get out of its way. And that, birth was, part of the home, normal life throughout most of history. And, it just was a whole different paradigm. It was, how do we support the normal? And most birth is normal. And that the countries in the world that have the best outcome are countries where there's, the midwives take care of normal, healthy, leaving the obstetricians to do what they're best at. They're surgeons. They're best at, diagnosing and treating diseases, complications, medically and surgically. But that high risk care is not serving the vast majority, like the normal healthy, right? So when midwives are working as a team together with, obstetricians, then we're getting the best outcomes. The United States has the worst outcomes, of mothers and babies being, dying or being severely ill from, damaged from birth, right? So when I went to midwifery school, I was like, I came home. And so when I was pregnant with my next baby in midwifery school, and of course I'm going to use a midwife, but I said, listen, I've had such birth trauma, and I didn't know necessarily about PTSD like I do now, but I just, I was scared, but I believe intellectually in this, in midwifery. I absolutely believe that my healthy body knows how to give birth. I know it, but I have to viscerally feel it for me to go promote this. I told her that, and she says, you'll be fine. You're going to see, it's going to be so healing. And that birth was just so healing. It was a totally physiologic, normal birth. And so,
Where were you? Where was that?
So I didn't know about, I did, so it's interesting. I was still, where was that? You mean want me to name the hospital? I just want to
No, but it was in a hospital. That's what I'm at.
It was a completely physiologic birth in a hospital. And it was night and day, like night and day, So I think that once I felt that I could do that, and then I was just on a mission, right? And so yeah, my first job as a midwife, so I have 4 kids, one in one way, and then the other births were just so healing. And I was on this mission to just in my own practice to just help people have that kind of experience in the hospital. I did do out of hospital clinical, but I felt, in a birthing center in New Jersey, and I just felt my first, experience. I was given a great job. It was a job in Brooklyn, position in Brooklyn, where it was called Doctor Midwife Team Care, and they modeled their practice after the UK, where the doctors they're just there for problems. Don't even bother them. They knew that the midwives were taking much better care of the healthy normal, and even somebody with insulin dependent diabetes or high blood pressure would still benefit from midwifery care, but they would manage the problem, right? And we did vaginal breaches, we did twins, VBACs, and it was just a great first job. And doing that for a while, and then I had my fourth baby, and then I was done commuting to Brooklyn. But I was so grateful for that experience, and it taught me that you could still have a physiologic healthy birth in the hospital. Then though, when I didn't want to commute, I was ready to start my home birth practice, which is now been almost 30 years. 1997 was our first home birth. Yeah, we started it from scratch. I started it with a doula, and she has since become, she became my nurse, and then she became a midwife, and we co-managed that for about 10 years. And so we're still close. We've each moved on in different ways. She's going more towards birth center, and I'm going more towards home. But or I went more towards home. But yeah. So home birth is really where I feel that I can practice authentic midwifery. In the hospital, there are still, we were still able to in that hospital, for example, but I didn't want to commute to Brooklyn. So I was finding that the hospitals in my area, I applied to, the difference was when I applied to Brooklyn in that hospital, they were like, we love midwives, welcome aboard. When I applied to some of the local hospitals, we're like, I was told in the privilege meeting, we're not so crazy about midwives. You're going to have to follow the ACOG guidelines. Like that means that everybody, so like all these things that were just like, so, don't go sneaking people food and, like just things that were just, to me, so basic, right? You can't just tell a marathon runner to run without any hydration or eating nourishment, or, and you just, there was so many protocols that were just not authentic to me. And it was getting stricter and stricter. So I felt to practice, to be to give the most, to have the moms have the most empowered, beautiful, sacred, transformative, undisturbed, physiologic, natural birth. I felt that the home setting was where I could really guide people best. And so that's where I stayed for 30 years. I did some hospital shifts, I did some hospital shifts in between here and there. And I would just go in and get everybody off the bed. I'm not going to mention names, but there's a hospital, it's just known. There's a lot of immigrants that go there. They get free care. And, these women are coming from countries where they gave birth in their house, right? They just gave birth. Like it was,
right.
They
what you do.
They breastfed. It was just, their moms did that. Their sisters did that. Their aunts did that. Right. So they have a very strong, a lot of them had a lot of community support, and they come to America and think America's great. But I come and do my shift, and everybody's in bed with an IV on the monitor. And these ladies know how to do, I would just take them off and get them off the IV, and we would dance. I would on 3 a.m, let's just dance this baby out, but, I couldn't, I still had the doctors, in the background. Right. So it's possible. And I have helped people who were able to have really sweet home birth like experiences in the hospital. It's a lot more work today. A lot more work, especially in certain hospitals. You can't go expecting a natural physiologic or, ecstatic, empowered, transformative birth where your hospital has a 50% or 60% cesarean rate, high rates of inductions, and everybody gets an IV. So you're gonna have a lot more fighting to not, respectful advocacy is.
I like that term.
Yeah, because it's not. I don't want people fighting. I mean, I had. Let me just tell you something. I had a mom who took, she contacted me in her rural area. She had a obstetrician who only, who just doesn't know about natural birth. She took my courses, and my whole course, and she read my book, and she wanted to, wanted a totally natural, beautiful birth that she loved, but it had to be in the hospital because there was no home birth midwives in her area, and she wasn't going to free birth. And she had this doctor who said he's never done. Sina, what you're talking about? They don't teach us natural birth, he said, in medical in our residency or in medical school. And everybody in my practice has epidurals, so I'm sure you're going to want an epidural. And he had a cesarean rate, was like very well, very high, 80%. I don't remember. It was like crazy, very high rates of medication, medical interventions and inductions, stuff like that. And she was just, I told her just respectfully, you have your preferences, and you just said you've done your research, and this is, you just want him to be a fly on the wall. and not interfere when everything's going well. And he's going, I don't know how to do that. Then you're going to need to find someone else, but anyway, she convinced him. There hadn't had to be a fight, but she convinced him, and she went and she was prepared. She had a doula, and she had a most beautiful experience in the hospital. Who do you think was brought to tears besides mom and dad?
The physician?
He says he's never seen anything
Wow.
like that. And,
Isn't
and,
that
and amazing. And I say, this is
amazing?
how we make change. I can't go change hospital policies, but if we have passionate mamas speaking up, right, and advocating for themselves, you can even have that experience in the most unsupportive, the nurses are rolling their eyes. But, then she said, she just, this is what she wanted, and she prepared for it, and it was possible for her. But I think it's harder today. Just hard. It's
Yes.
getting harder.
It's getting harder. Well, Anne, you've given us from your own stories to all your wisdom and your experience so much, but I'm going to ask you to go deeper for all the people that are listening and go, oh my goodness, like I am going to have to respectfully advocate or maybe change providers or change place of birth. But I know you prepare people. We said, you're going to teach us how to love their labor, love their birth. What are some tips you can give for
So
people?
yeah, this is like my whole, a whole part of my course, but I'm just
Right.
saying that just like, today we have to realize we are living in the West, in, well, whoever, I don't know the audience, but in the westernized culture. I'm not talking to people who live in countries like Sweden, where it's just the norm that everybody goes to a midwife if they're healthy, right? I'm talking about if you're living in a country where everybody pretty much goes to the hospital, and there's a lot of fear around birth. And we're not even around birth. We're not even in communities. The internet, I have a love-hate relationship with it, but it doesn't really, it's not the same as a community. It's not the same as being around everybody breastfeeding and home birthing. So there's a lot of trust in, well, I don't know, since COVID, a lot of distrust, but I've seen, but people, a lot of people just trust modern medicine and technology over themselves, and over and don't know anything about birth. And so I think we have to just, it starts really with having people, we have to teach, it's a practice of, and it's a mindset shift, and kind of have to look at it as a dance performance or running your marathon. Or I had a mom in labor told me this was like mountain climbing. She's like one of those professional mountain climbers who climbs these like 90-degree angle rocks. And in the heat of labor, she told me this is like mountain climbing. And I'm not going to engage her left brain and have a conversation in transition of, heat of labor. But afterwards, I asked her, and this woman doesn't wing it. She's had a lot of training to do what she does. So you could say, well, if you're telling me my body knows what to do, why do I have to prepare? Because you have to deculture. You have to get your mind out of the way. And then sort of how to get your mind to work with you, to tap into your sensual, tap into your primal, right? And so the reason she said that it was like climbing a mountain is it's kind of like, she had a mindset is I'm climbing the mountain. Not like I'm going to try this naturally, but if I need an epidural, I'm going to have it, right? She had a mindset is I'm going to do this, right? So same kind of thing. It's when you're in a hospital and you have a mindset, I'm going to try naturally, and if I can, I'll do an epidural. I mean, if an epidural is an option, it's it's given commonly, and a person is, being, not using gravity on their back and given medications and things like that, it's more likely to happen, right? Or especially if someone doesn't have a support. But there's so much about the mindset, right? Like, I'm going to do this. I can do this. I'm going to find my strength. I can do hard things. So when she, she was climbing the mountain, and like she got to the top and she's like, oh, I did this, right? And then she saw she had like another mountain that was like double the size. And she's like, okay, got to eat more, got to drink more. Things are hurting me a little bit, but I'm going to climb a mountain. I'm not going down, right? And so it was really her mindset. You ask any athlete, any professional Olympic athlete, sports athlete, with a lot of pros, it's more the mindset than the physical ability, than the training.
Yeah,
Than their physical acuity. It's Michael Jordan is like, I'm going to try to make the shot. He says, I knew I'm going to make the shot, right? That's why he gets all these points in the last 7 seconds. He just knew from 3-pointers. He knows he's going to make it. So anyway, she had this inner knowing, right? And people need to convince me, like it takes time to have this inner knowing, and you have to dig deep. What is your inner knowing? It can't be just like an intellectual thing. You really have to spend time with yourself and educate yourself so that that your body knows how to give birth. We were born, women have the ability to give birth. Our bodies, all animals, their bodies know how to give birth. Humans, our brain gets in the way right now, especially in the culture. So here she is, climbing this double the size of the mountain, and things are hurting. She's like, oh my God, how am I going to do this, right? She finds her strength and she gets up there, and then she sees something 4 times the size. So she's exhausted. She's done. This is where I get to transition, right? The hardest part of labor, where we're done. And we might say, I can't, I'm done, right?
right.
There's no way. But she's not going down. The baby's coming out, right? The baby's not going back up. Labor's not going to stop. So to her, it's like a non-negotiable choice. She's going to climb. Right. And she finds her strength. We as women have to know that billions of women have done this before all of us. And when we're in labor, there's 300,000 on average women who have given birth before us. So we have to connect to that power. And she just found her. I'm so sorry. Wait a minute.
That's okay.
Yeah, you can go out. So she found this power, this strength that was in her, and she didn't even know she had it. And she just, that's when the epinephrine, the adrenaline kicks in, whatever it was, but so much of it was her mindset, because, and she just didn't give up, and she got there. And when she got up there, the feeling, right?
Right.
I did that. I can do everything, like, wow, I'm, proud of yourself, and the strength she didn't know she had, and it's transformative, and it's all of it's orgasmic, right? So I liken birth to that. And but
great analogy.
Yeah, I love that analogy. But yeah, so there's so much, educating yourself of it's very there was a YouTube that went viral a while back about this woman who was trying to poop. And then this person comes in and starts taking her blood pressure. Someone comes in and starts taking her labs, and someone comes in and measures the peristalsis of the poop coming out, and someone is asking her how much weight she gained since last week, and it very, very similar to what is happening in labor. Eventually there was 10 people in the room, and then at the end it was like, could she poop?
No.
Right. So this is a biological process. I am very holistic and spiritual in my approach. We are not just a body. We are mind, body, heart, and spirit. And we can, our bodies know how to do it, but now we have to put ourselves in an environment, and we have to prepare so that we can allow our bodies know how to do it. We're breathing, our heart's beating, our kidneys are working, and we don't. So birth is very much the same thing. So the more that that a person prepares and educates themselves, and sets themselves up with the support that will support this, right? Because is then you're more likely to succeed. Now, why I say love your birth, because so not everything's in our control. You can prepare, I always say expect the unexpected. So that could be, for example, I had a birth where mom wanted a water birth, and all her altar and everything was around the water and everything like that. But she lived in a sort of like a loft, and it was beautiful setting. But things weren't happening in the different positions we were trying in the water. And I just made the suggestion, you want to get out and try the squatting rope? And he was like, okay. Well, the thing is it was some modern, interesting kind of house. There were no doors. My squatting rope goes above
over the door,
and then you have to close the door. Even the bathroom had these like two glass things. You go in, I don't know, there were no doors except to the boiler room. And so it just happened. So I put it so in the boiler room, and it worked. And she was rocking it, and and the baby was coming, and I'm like, do you want, you wanted this? She wanted this water birth. And no. And so she had the birth in the boiler room, but the thing is that, so when you're in labor, you need to kind of surrender. You make your preferences, and then, expect the unexpected. So that could mean that you wanted to birth in this room or that room, or you wanted a water birth. And we always say she had a water view. But sometimes that means, like, medical interventions aren't evil. Sometimes that might mean, like, I had a woman who was just in labor, on and off prodromal labor for 5 days. And by the time she needed to start, it was her first baby. By the time she needed to push, she was done. She was exhausted, and she kept vomiting her whole labor. So she was so dehydrated. And I said, I think if we give you IV fluids, you could do this. You have, and in the beginning, she didn't want it, but then it was just like, okay, I'll take the IV fluids. And she had her baby, right? And so like, that's selective use of intervention that enabled her to have her natural home birth. And I still call that natural, because
yes,
a natural birth, so even if birth ends in the cesarean, right? A cesarean is a birth. And I encourage, and it takes work. It's not easy, to love your experience. No matter, it's easier to love your experience, actually. I hope, but not always. Some people have trauma if they don't get the birth they wanted, if they end up with medical interventions. But if you did everything, and those medical interventions are needed, and it's given with trauma sensitive care, right? Gentle, family centered cesarean, and can we get to that place that spiritual level, that everything's happening for us, not to us, and be grateful for all of it, because it was
yes.
perfect.
That's so beautiful. And you've given us so many nuggets. And I know that people are going to say, how can I be in touch with you? What courses do you offer? Can you share how people can reach you and some of your offerings they can take advantage of?
So okay. So so I have my Anne's Guide to Pregnancy, Birth, Postpartum, and it's and it includes newborn and breastfeeding, but it's how I prepare the moms in my practice. And it kind of came from one of the first interviews I've had years ago, of a woman who asked me, a doula. She was interviewing me. She happens to be in film and marketing, but she just loved my page on Instagram. She wanted to know, do you travel, and would you travel to San Francisco and be my midwife? And I said, no, I love San Francisco, but I don't travel. She says, well, we need to get you making a course. You have a course? Like, how do you prepare people in your practice to have, because I had not once have to transfer someone who needed an epidural with normal labor sensations, not once. And I have a 5% cesarean rate. 7% transfer rate to the hospital. So how do you prepare? So she is actually the one who encouraged me to make this sort of like how I prepare people in my practice, to inform them, to give them the tools that I feel that are most effective in through supporting yourself postpartum through birth and pregnancy. And then in adjunct, I have my Natural Birth Secrets book. There's a whole story how that happened, but that's more like it's more like, a deep dive into the research. If you want like, a deep dive into the discussion of the hot topics, and it's like really like a Bible of all the holistic modalities of how to, deal with heartburn, depression, insomnia, constipation, all the, healthy living, to have mind, body, heart, and spirit, and just like dealing with all the common ailments from the whole journey of preconception through postpartum and beyond. And that's about 580 pages. So yeah, that's why it's not on audiobook. It's more of like a reference book. But it does, people want to know, what are the studies on home birth, or what are the, how do I
Right.
make a decision about group B strep, or all these different things. And
And
then
where do we find these? Can you share your website?
my website is homesweethomebirth.com, and it's not just for home birth. It's having the home sweet home birth model of care, which is kind of what I'm saying, the respectful, the compassionate, the trauma sensitive, the encouraging the most healthy outcome, mind, body, heart, and spirit, natural, physiologic, undisturbed, allowing that to happen, selective intervention if needed. But most of the time, I'm amazed how often we don't have to do anything. Right. So yeah, so there's that. And then I'm a yoga teacher, and I have found that to be life-saving for me. And there's a lot of research on how it can enhance, so many benefits from discomforts in pregnancy to active, enabling people to help themselves feel more grounded and balanced, and master their inner calm, and assume positions for active birthing and stuff like that. So I have an online course for classes for that. The other book is the Trauma Release Formula, which is a whole other discussion, but how I healed my birth trauma, and how I used what a modality was so powerful to help other people heal their birth trauma, because you can't heal trauma with talk therapy or medication. It's somatic. It's a somatic relief. It's like the trauma lives in our body, and the nervous system has to be reset. And there's different techniques, EMDR and somatic experience and conscious connected breathing, that book goes more into, like, people say, I had such a traumatic birth, how can I heal from that and prepare for a better birth this time around? So if someone, I also do online coaching, I still practice. So if people want to come see me in person, they can do that. But it's homesweethomebirth.com, and, holistic gynecology. And I do the breath work for people. And yeah.
Thank you so much, Anne. And for everyone listening, these are all in the show notes. I really hope you'll visit Anne's website, follow her. And you give us so much wisdom. And I totally have loved having this time with you. I'm sure everyone is really thinking about all that you're offering and sharing. For those that are listening, please tag us. We always love to hear your favorite takeaways, what you're thinking about in planning and loving your birth. And we thank you for joining us for this episode of the Orgasmic Birth Podcast. We always appreciate your rating and review of our podcast. It helps us reach so many others as well, to inspire them. And we hope you'll join us next week on the next episode of our podcast. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.